I had no idea that morning would be the last time I'd see myself as Evan. Not really. Not the way I'd always known him. But I didn't know that yet. None of it. Not what waited behind those ivy-covered walls. Not what they would awaken in me. Not the person I was destined to become. All I knew was that I needed a job, and Claymore Hall was hiring. The ground stretched before me as I pulled up the long gravel drive, and something deep in my chest tightened. The place rose from the landscape like a fever dream, ancient and impossibly elegant. Flower beds lined every walkway in perfect rows. The scent of cedar chips drifted through my open window, mixing with something sweeter I couldn't name. Everything here seemed deliberate, curated, as if the estate itself was watching, waiting, selecting. I parked near the front entrance and stepped out, my worn shoes crunching against the pristine path. The administration building loomed ahead, all red brick and climbing roses. Somewhere inside, a woman named Mrs. Parker was expecting me. I straightened my jacket and walked toward my future. I just didn't realize yet how completely it would unmake everything I thought I was. Her secretary, a strikingly attractive young woman, ushered me inside. The office was lined floor to ceiling, with leather-bound books and furnished with obvious care. A large oval desk of dark oak dominated the room. Mrs. Parker rose from her well-padded chair to greet me with a firm handshake. "Please sit down," she said, settling back into her own seat. "Well, Mr. Miller, I see you are looking for employment. What brings you to Claymore Hall? Your advertisement for a groundskeeper, ma'am. Have you any experience in that line, young man?" "Only at home, Mrs. Parker. But I am familiar with most of the tools." "I'm sure that's true. But are you also familiar with tractors and power takeoffs, fertilizing schedules, weed and pest control? Would you be able to lift the heavy machinery involved and operate a forklift when necessary?" I hesitated. "Well, I don't know, ma'am. As you can see, I'm a bit on the slight side." She studied me for a moment. "Mr. Miller, may I call you Evan?" "Sure. Well, Evan, I think your stature may be a little slight for that particular position. Now, don't look so crestfallen. We have another opening we haven't advertised yet, and you may be well suited to it. I see your academic record isn't too bad. Tell me, why aren't you going on to college?" "My folks simply can't afford it, and my grades aren't quite good enough for a scholarship, I'm afraid. So I thought I would take a job for a couple of years and try to save enough to get started." "I see. In that case, this other position may be perfect for you. How would you like to be a teacher's assistant?" I straightened in my chair. "I don't know. What are the duties? And the pay?" "The duties are to assist the instructor as necessary, distributing and collecting test papers, grading them when the teacher's load becomes too great, monitoring student behavior, running errands, that sort of thing. The pay is about the same, but the work is much easier and far more suited to your physique. There would also be the benefit of learning the subject material yourself, which would serve you well when you eventually move on to college. How does that sound?" "It sounds wonderful, Mrs. Parker. When do I start?" "Right away, if you like. But there are a couple of rules. Call them suggestions, really. We don't absolutely insist. It's up to you, and we would prefer you do things our way for your own safety, but the final decision remains yours." I tilted my head. "I don't understand." "Well, for one thing, the male staff all wear these tiny earplugs. They are quite small, nearly invisible. We find them helpful in blocking out unwanted noise and distractions. They don't filter out speech, but they do filter out music and other loud sounds. The other suggestion is that we would prefer you take your meals in the teacher's lounge, though you may eat with the students if you strike up a friendship or feel more comfortable there. You may even take your meals off campus if you wish. Just be aware that everything you do here bears a consequence of some sort, but the choice is always yours." "Fine, Mrs. Parker. I'll try the earplugs and eat with the instructors for a while." She nodded approvingly. "Are you aware that room and board are included with our positions?" No, I wasn't. "Well, sometimes the hours run long and the work proves demanding, so we provide quarters on campus. We would actually prefer that you stay here during the week. You may go home on weekends, of course. That would be fine. Well, Evan, I think that concludes our interview. Consider yourself hired as a teacher's assistant. Take the rest of the day to go home and gather your things, then come back and settle in. Lily, the lovely young lady you just met, will help you get situated when you return. Oh, and the salary is $350 a week to start. I think you'll find that adequate. Thank you, Mrs. Parker. I'll be back in an hour or two. To say I was elated would be a tremendous understatement. As I drove home, a mere 30-minute journey, I found myself singing along with the radio. Easy listening songs, nothing too loud. I have never been particularly fond of rock and roll. Imagine it. A teacher's assistant at a prep school, and I would be learning at the same time. This was better than anything I had dared to hope for. I could hardly wait to tell Mom and Dad. When I pulled into the driveway, I fairly floated into the house. My mother looked up from the kitchen counter and smiled. My, you certainly look happy. Did you get the job, honey? Even better, Mom. Instead of the groundskeeper position, they hired me as a teacher's assistant. I'll be learning while I'm earning. They want me to stay on campus during the week, though, so I'll only be home on weekends. That's wonderful, dear. Your daddy will be so pleased. Room and board plus $350 a week, Mom. Isn't that great? Very. And we won't have to spend as much on groceries either. Your dad will like that too. When do you start? I'm just here to pick up my things and head back, so I'll be packing a bag and then I'm off. She nodded thoughtfully. All right, honey. Take your nicer things. You want to make a good impression. After you get a few paychecks, you may want to buy some new clothes. You don't have a lot of dressy items, and they may dress a bit upscale there, you know? Yes, I probably will need to. We'll have to see how the others dress first. Then I can decide what I need. I headed to my room and set about packing. It didn't take long. Underwear and toiletries went into the suitcase. The rest I left on hangers for the 2 hooks in the back of my car, which didn't get much of a workout. Yes, I would definitely need some new clothes soon. I was certain of that. When I arrived back at Claymore Hall, Lily Bennett met me at the administration building and walked me to my quarters. They were on the first floor of a dormitory, which I found rather odd, but quickly dismissed. After all, I was the same age as the students here. It didn't really matter to me, and perhaps I would make some friends my own age while dealing with the faculty on a daily basis. I settled in and hung up my meager wardrobe in the closet. The chest of drawers swallowed my underwear and a few sweaters with plenty of room to spare. The room itself was nicely appointed with cheerful colors and pretty curtains framing the window. A flower print quilted bedspread covered the 4-poster full-sized bed. There was a rocker recliner in one corner, a small television, and a desk of sorts that looked more like my mother's vanity table than any workspace I had ever used. I had my own bathroom, and I noticed small speakers set into the ceiling in both rooms. Probably for announcements and fire drills, I reasoned. However, since I had not yet put in the earplugs, I could hear soft, gentle music drifting from those speakers. It was lovely. Exactly the kind of music I enjoyed listening to, though barely audible throughout the rest of the school due to the general noise level. In fact, I kept my radio on at home all night, tuned to just this same kind of gentle, easy listening sound. It helped me sleep. This was going to be fine. I could do it here too. I didn't finish settling in until about 4 in the afternoon and made my way back to find Lily. She told me where the faculty ate and explained the meal schedule. Dinner was served between 4 and 6, breakfast at 7, and lunch from noon until 2. Evan, she said as I turned to leave. Yes? You don't have your earplugs in. I touched my ear and smiled. Oh, I was enjoying the music in my room so much I forgot. Thanks. I inserted the tiny plugs and strolled over to the faculty lounge for supper. The room was warm and inviting, filled with the quiet murmur of conversation. Ah, Mr. Miller, our new assistant. Get yourself something and sit so we can get better acquainted, said a woman I hadn't yet met. I gathered a modest tray of food and a beverage and returned to sit with her. I noticed only a couple of other males in the entire lounge. "You seem to have me at a disadvantage," I said. "I'm sorry. My name is Carter, Megan Carter. For the most part, you'll be my assistant in English and economics. But when I don't need you, you'll be passed around a little, I'm afraid. I hope you don't mind. We're a bit short-handed right now." "No, I'm looking forward to it. It will give me better exposure to a collegiate atmosphere." "It sounds like fun." She raised an eyebrow. "Well, it may be. But you'll find it's also a lot of hard work, so consider yourself warned." As we ate, I noticed that most of the instructors were women, and that none of them wore those earplugs. I didn't hear that pleasant background music here either. We chatted, and a few others joined us. I found myself caught up in the small talk, albeit mostly what one might call girl talk. But then, that's what women do, isn't it? I supposed I would have to get used to it. Listening to women talk seemed like a reasonable way to learn what they were interested in, and that should help me communicate with them more easily. Lily had given me my schedule and a detailed map of the campus and classrooms. My first class was at 8:30 the following morning. I decided to visit the library, gather the textbooks for the courses I would be assisting with, and do a little studying before bed. When I returned to my room, I removed those plugs and settled into the chair to browse through my new textbooks. The next thing I knew, it was midnight. I had fallen asleep right there with a book in my lap. I got up, stripped down to my underwear, and went to bed. That was when I got a pleasant surprise. My sheets were nylon or something similar. They felt wonderfully smooth against my skin, but I was so exhausted that I fell asleep almost instantly. I woke at 7, showered, and shaved my meager beard. I put on slacks, a button-down shirt, and a sports coat, then headed to breakfast. I remembered to put in my earplugs this time, still not fully understanding why they were necessary, but following directions nonetheless. Mrs. Carter was already there. We finished our meal together and walked to class side by side. She seemed like a very pleasant woman, easy to talk to. I liked her immediately. I had never worked for a woman before, but it didn't seem like it would be difficult at all. As the day progressed, I gained better insight into my duties and my general gopher status. A jack of all trades, expected to handle whatever needed handling. That promised to make things more interesting and far less boring. I knew teaching could become monotonous, but variety would keep me engaged. I couldn't help noticing a couple of the girls in my classes. Very cute and clearly intelligent, too. They dressed beautifully in proper dresses and elegant heels. The boys looked nice as well, if perhaps just a little on the feminine side themselves. Their clothing wasn't the rough, masculine style I would have expected for October, nor was it truly feminine either. There were no blue jeans anywhere. Every student was impeccably groomed with longer hairstyles, and two of the boys wore earrings. I could have sworn the one they called Asher was wearing lip gloss, or at least some kind of tinted chapstick. They all had shiny, well-manicured nails, too. Grooming must be important here, I thought to myself. Observing the rest of the class, I saw the same attention to appearance everywhere I looked. I was going to have to do some catching up to keep pace with the boys who had already been here for a month. I made a mental note of that for later. If this was how Mrs. Carter wanted her students to present themselves, then I would look terribly out of place if I didn't shape up a bit. My first day went well, although I felt rather nervous about dealing with students my own age. They seemed perfectly fine with the arrangement and understood I was simply an employee doing my job. At first, they all called me Mr. Miller, just as I had been introduced. I ran into Asher out in the hallway between classes, and we talked for a few minutes. He seemed very nice, terribly refined for a boy. But I liked him. He was also remarkably bright, which I admired. I told him to call me Evan rather than Mr. Miller, and to drop by my room sometime if he liked. He said he would. After dinner, I returned to my room, removed those bothersome earplugs, and studied for a while. Then it struck me that I really ought to go out and get myself a complete manicure kit. So that's exactly what I did. Why I didn't just settle for a simple emery board, I couldn't say. For some reason, I also picked up hand lotion, clear polish, and polish dryer too. When I came back, I proceeded to do my best to make my hands look like those of the other boys in class, which was to say more or less like the girls in class. Cuticles pushed back, nails rounded as best I could manage. I applied only the clear polish, along with this nail hardener I had purchased. I must have put on 4 coats by the evening's end. They looked very shiny and rather nice, if a bit short. Well, they would grow. I had noticed how easily the other students picked up papers with their longer nails. That would certainly be an asset in my paper shuffling duties. I found myself looking forward to their growth. I didn't fall asleep in the chair this time. Instead, I took my time enjoying the luxurious feeling of my bedding as I snuggled in for the night, having placed my earplugs on the nightstand so I could hear the alarm. By this point, I had reasoned that the plugs were simply meant to help me concentrate on my work, and I was sure they accomplished that. But sleep is not work. My second day went much like the first, with me making more observations about the work and the students. That Jenna Archer was absolutely stunning. She dressed rather provocatively, and the combination of her clothing and what was probably underneath made her quite the sight in my eyes. I was going to have to see if I couldn't get to know her as well. My days fell into a comfortable routine, as one might expect. Life is like that. Before I knew it, the week had passed, and it was time to go home for my first weekend. Mom gave me a big hug at the door, and I waited until Dad got home to tell them all about my job and everything I had experienced. That way, I would only have to tell it once. They both noticed my manicure right away, but made no negative comments. I explained that all the students at Claymore Hall were very well groomed, and I wanted to at least keep pace as an assistant. It seemed like the professional thing to do. We spent a pleasant weekend, just lounging around the house, although I did get stuck cutting the grass. Dad was watching football, something I never cared for anyway. I preferred tennis and ice skating, but neither was on that particular weekend. I left Sunday night to return to campus. Once back in my room, I gave myself another manicure, and for whatever reason, stopped at the store beforehand to pick up a few facial cleansing products. I trimmed and filed my toenails too, applying clear polish to them as well. I spent some time brushing my hair until it shone. Since I wouldn't get paid except on the 1st and 15th of the month, I had a week to wait for my first paycheck. I already knew most of it would have to go toward new clothes. One evening that week, Asher did stop by my room, and we had a nice visit. He was obviously from a refined family, well-spoken and graceful in his mannerisms. I mentioned that I liked his slacks and shirt. He blushed slightly and thanked me. "Would you like to go shopping with me when I get paid, Asher?" His eyes lit up. "Oh, sure, I love to shop. If you like my clothes, I'm sure we can find you some very nice similar things too." And so a date was made for Saturday. While we were on the way to the mall, I asked Asher if he knew Jenna Archer. "Oh yes," he replied. "She's very sweet. Are you interested?" "I'm not dead," I joked back. He smiled. "She's a second-year student, Evan, but you're nice-looking, if perhaps a bit slight. Maybe she would go out with you. I can introduce you if you like. Then it's up to you what happens from there." "Great, I'll settle for that." We reached the mall and went inside. Shopping with Asher proved both expensive and educational. I noticed his own clothing was soft and flowing, made of expensive fabrics with elegant draping. Naturally, that was exactly what he recommended for me as well. After he showed me about fabrics and styles for a while, I had to admit that I liked the soft, flowing materials too. I bought several shirts, a couple pairs of lightweight slacks, and then we moved on to underwear. What Asher called underwear was more like lingerie, frankly. At first, the idea of wearing soft nylon hip-high briefs with no front placket and cap-sleeved satiny undershirts frightened me a little. But then I remembered how much I loved the feel of my bedsheets and wanted more of that sensation against my skin. I ended up purchasing several sets of rather slinky nylon undergarments. The briefs were high-rise, which meant I couldn't stand while relieving myself. Then it struck me. None of the young men at Claymore Hall used the urinals. I hadn't seen a single male student stand to use the bathroom in 2 weeks. Only staff members did. How very odd. It also did not escape my notice that we were probably not shopping in a men's clothing store. The name on the storefront was simply Arcadia, with no designation as to gender. I didn't see any men's suits or traditional men's shoes anywhere inside. We moved on to a self-service shoe store where the aisles were marked only with sizes. I usually went to regular shoe stores where someone waited on you. I spotted a nice pair of penny loafers and tried them on in my usual size. Too small. I moved up the aisle until I found some that fit properly. I think it was fortunate I was wearing very lightweight socks that day. The size was larger and 8, but somehow they made my feet look smaller, almost petite. They also seemed rather lightweight, which I found I quite liked. Again, how odd. I needed some slippers too, and found a pair of scuffs in the same aisle. They seemed a little fancy in a silver color, but they were comfortable and fit well enough. They would do nicely for padding around my room. We paid for everything and left. I only had about $100 remaining, so we had to stop shopping, which clearly disappointed Asher. But I needed to save a little for gas and snacks throughout the week. This was only a 1-week paycheck after all. He really did love to shop though, so we didn't leave the mall entirely. He wandered into a few more shops looking for things for himself. He did find a shirt he liked in one boutique. Only it wasn't really a shirt, it was a blouse. Soft and pretty, not too feminine, but a blouse nonetheless. I simply told him how nice it looked on him, and it truly did. I couldn't quite get over how easily I accepted this young man buying a lady's blouse for himself, and how naturally I complimented him on it. I had never developed any particular prejudices along these lines, though. It simply hadn't occurred to me to check which way the buttons went on my own new shirts either. He did look sweet in it, and that was definitely lip gloss he was wearing, with a very light tint to it as well. Asher was a rather androgynous person, although it didn't bother me the way I thought perhaps it should. I just accepted him exactly as he was. Earrings, lip gloss, and all. I could have sworn he had little bumps protruding beneath that blouse too. No, that was silly. He might be a little effeminate, but surely he wasn't growing breasts. Then again, I wasn't entirely certain. Nor was I certain why I didn't seem to care one way or the other. He did appear somewhat more attractive than when we first met, though. That much I noticed. We returned to the dormitory together, and the conversation on the drive back was rather animated on his part. Much more so than I was accustomed to from a boy. But Asher was definitely his own person, very expressive and unguarded in his enthusiasm. If I wanted him for a friend, I would simply have to accept that about him. So I did. I was a little concerned that if I spent too much time with an effeminate boy, I might be guilty by association. But I wasn't effeminate myself, so what did it really matter? At least, I didn't think I was. Besides, he could introduce me to my dream girl. That alone made the friendship worthwhile. We parted ways at the dormitory entrance. I went to my room and put my purchases away, then changed into one of those lovely new sets of undergarments. They felt absolutely wonderful against my skin. I decided right then and there that I was going to like nylon far more than I ever had cotton. I vowed to acquire more soft and slinky clothing at the earliest opportunity. Perhaps a satin robe would be nice. As I was admiring my new underwear in the mirror, I noticed my hair needed some attention. I washed and conditioned it until it gleamed with a healthy shine, then blew it dry into what seemed rather more volume than usual. The combination of my silky undergarments and those smooth sheets was almost too much sensation to bear. It was wonderful. I was so grateful I had taken this job. I drifted into dreamland, listening to that soothing music floating down from the ceiling speakers. Just before waking the next morning, I had a peculiar dream. I was in the bath, shaving all the hair off my legs and hands and underarms, reveling in how smooth my skin felt beneath my fingertips. I woke with the sensation still lingering. It took a few more days for circumstances to play into my hands, but I finally convinced Asher to introduce me to Jenna. I'm afraid I was utterly taken with her from the moment we spoke. She was very friendly, but maintained a certain aloofness that told me I would need to take things slowly. She was going to require some knowing before I could even think about asking her out, and even then, she might not want to date me. But rejection wouldn't be my first experience with disappointment. All I could do was try to make a friend first and see where things led. I didn't really have designs on betting her. I simply wanted to get to know her. The first thing I had to do along those lines was abandon the faculty cafeteria for the student one. Otherwise, I wouldn't have much opportunity to talk with her outside of class. The clatter in the student dining hall was so loud that I had to remove my earplugs just to hear her speak. The menu was quite different from what I had grown accustomed to, and all of the drinks tasted somewhat unusual. But for Jenna, I would adapt. Mrs. Carter advised against eating in the student cafeteria and warned me the food wasn't as good, but one makes sacrifices for what one wants. So in addition to my duties and associations with the faculty, I began spending my leisure time with Asher and Jenna. Asher would usually visit me in my room, and I'm afraid I found myself slipping into relating to him the way he related to me, in a rather animated and expressive fashion. If I had to put a label on it, I would say he encouraged me to be more fluid in my movements and speech. While I suspected it might look a little campy to an outside observer, it began to feel rather comfortable and natural. Jenna was different. I had to meet her at the library or the student lounge or the coffee shop. We kept everything very platonic between us, and I wasn't at all sure I was making any real progress. But we did begin to share details of our lives and became genuinely friendly. I learned she came from Lansing, Michigan. Her father owned a small department store, which was, of course, where her lovely clothing came from. My blue-collar background wasn't nearly so interesting, and I played it down at every opportunity. Then it struck me one evening that I was spending all my free time with a girl and a boy who sometimes appeared to be more girl than boy himself. Oh well, what did it matter? I wore one of my new outfits to the coffee shop one night, and Jenna told me I had good taste in clothes. In what I immediately recognized as a feminine, limp-wristed gesture, I explained that Asher had helped me pick out a few things. She smiled warmly at that. "Oh, Asher has wonderful taste, Evan. You should listen to his advice. He should be a designer someday. If you follow his lead, you'll be voted best dressed on campus in no time." "Really?" "Oh, yes. Believe me. Trust his judgment completely. You'll just love how you look. Put yourself in his hands." "Well, all right. If you say so, Jenna. He does dress well. We'll be doing more shopping in another week, and I'd planned to get some nicer things anyway." I paused for a moment. "He is rather effeminate, though, don't you think?" She smiled sweetly, a little twinkle appearing in her eye. She looked at me slyly from across the table. "Oh, I know," she said softly. "But I like a boy who isn't afraid of that side of himself. A little of that might look attractive on you too, Evan. You certainly have the face for it." Well, that was quite a revelation. Maybe I would explore that side at some point. I had never tried even a hint of femininity before. But then I did realize that I had been paying rather too much attention to my hair and nails and underwear lately. All traditionally girlish pursuits by default. What's more, I was genuinely enjoying these activities and the feelings that accompanied them. I don't know what made me do it, but on the way back to the dormitory, we stopped by the commissary, and I picked up a bottle of natural color, clear polish. It had a slightly pinkish tint to it. I walked Jenna to her room, said goodnight, and returned to my own quarters. There, I gave myself another pedicure and manicure, using the natural shade. After 3 careful coats, there was definitely a bit of color showing on my nails. By now, after 3 weeks of pushing back cuticles and filing regularly, my nails really did look as nice as any of the other students. I almost thought of them as the other girls before catching myself. Whatever had put that notion in my head, I wondered? But my nails truly did look lovely. They were long and rounded and gleaming like polished jewels. My hands had become quite soft and pretty, from all the hand lotion I had been using. I was genuinely pleased with them. My parents noticed the changes, of course, but they didn't say much about it. They seemed to accept it as part of my refined new atmosphere and my better clothing. I was a teacher's assistant after all, not a factory worker. A certain amount of polish was expected. Spending so much time with Asher and Jenna in that noisy cafeteria, I had pretty much abandoned my earplugs entirely. I never really understood their purpose to begin with, and the faculty had said it was my choice anyway. I tucked them away in my nightstand drawer and simply left them there. It seemed, in retrospect, that this act, along with my other new activities, was beginning to feel quite liberating to me. I was becoming more like my friends. Asher and Jenna and I grew closer with each passing day. I found myself becoming very accepting of Asher's femininity, which seemed to be on the rise with every encounter. I began to think of him as one of the girls, and didn't really mind anymore. He certainly talked like one, and acted like one lately. I had no idea femininity could be contagious, but I was soon to discover that Jenna's suggestion about embracing a little bit of it had taken root in me quite insidiously. I believe I was loosening up, as they say. I'm afraid that, to a casual observer, the three of us seated together in the coffee shop would have looked from a distance, just like three girls talking and giggling as young women are wont to do. Upon receipt of my third paycheck, after 5 weeks at Claymore Hall, all three of us hit the mall together. I hardly know where to begin describing that afternoon. I had grown so accustomed to being around girls and feminine boys like Asher that it felt almost like I was in some kind of post-hypnotic trance. Just being with them put me in a decidedly girlish mood. I couldn't get over myself. They would suggest something, and whatever it was, I tried it on or did it. And it was fun. I had never enjoyed shopping so much in my entire life. Most of our time was spent in decidedly ladies' specialty shops. The first thing I discovered was that a women's size 10 slack fit me far better than anything I could find in the men's department. Then they coaxed me into some blouses and blazers suitable for work, where the feminine cut and buttoning wouldn't be so noticeable. Or so I convinced myself. The blazers accentuated my slender waist and what appeared to be my rounding hips. Why were my hips getting fuller? I wondered briefly. The thought passed quickly. It all felt rather grand with my nylon undergarments beneath everything. Asher truly did have wonderful taste, just as Jenna had promised. But when exactly had my bottom begun to blossom like this? In those nice slacks, blouse, and blazer, I looked like I had the beginnings of a figure all of a sudden. I simply don't know what came over me that day. I was so terribly receptive to all these completely feminine things. But then Jenna had already said she admired a boy who wasn't afraid of his femininity, and I admired her deeply. I still had hopes for something more between us. So I let them dress me, and I loved the resulting look, even if it was becoming more like Asher's with each purchase. I was acting so frivolous and demonstrative all of a sudden. My goodness. I didn't leave that mall with a single masculine article of clothing or pair of shoes. They took me to a makeup counter where I sat perfectly still and allowed the salesgirl to pierce my ears with little gold hoops. I loved the way they looked framing my longer, fuller hair. The girl insisted on plucking my eyebrows into graceful arches and applied some blush to my cheeks, along with a light frost lipstick appropriate for my coloring. And I bought both products without hesitation. She kept referring to me as Miss, and I didn't have the heart to correct her. Judging by the look of me in the mirror, I could barely tell what I was myself anymore. At this point, I must confess I was feeling a great deal like a miss myself, if the truth be told. There I stood in girls' slacks, a feminine blouse, and a fitted blazer. By now, they had coaxed me into frilly panties and a delicate camisole from the lingerie store, sheer knee-high hosiery, and loafers with a 2.5-inch stacked heel. The transformation felt complete somehow. "Evan," Jenna said warmly, "you look positively darling. Please keep dressing this way. You have real potential." "Don't you think so, Asher?" "Oh yes, Jenna. Evan, you are going to turn out absolutely smashing." I blushed profusely as I gazed at my reflection in the full-length mirror and saw exactly what they saw. I had become very androgynous now, too, leaning decidedly toward girl, just like my friend Asher. I looked sweet, much too sweet. Then it struck me. I had just thought of myself as looking sweet, and I was dressed girlishly from the skin out. It felt wonderful. I tingled all over with goose pimples at the realization. I was actually a bit aroused by my own reflection, and my nipples hardened against the slinky lingerie. What did Asher mean about going to turn out? What was happening to me? Did I care? Would it affect my job? I certainly hoped not. And then I remembered. No male students ever used the urinals. Not a single one. Wearing lingerie as I was now, I had to use the stalls anyway. But I didn't seem to mind in the slightest. It took me a little while to grow accustomed to walking in heels, stacked or not. They made me walk like Jenna, with that gentle sway to my hips. But then, I was dressed like a girl anyway. Even with the 2.5-inch heels, I stood only 5 feet 8 inches tall. What the hell? So I looked a little feminine. So what? So did most of the boys at this school. Of course, when we stopped to eat at a cafe, the waiter approached our table with a smile and asked, "What will it be, ladies?" That rather set the tone for things. We simply went along with it, sharing a good laugh afterward. At his expense, I wondered? Or was it at mine? My new mode of dress and general appearance, earrings included, did not escape Mrs. Carter, or the rest of the class, or any of the other instructors. I noticed them noticing the changes, but not a word was said. Except by Mrs. Carter herself one afternoon. "You're not wearing your earplugs, dear. And you've been eating in the student cafeteria for quite a while now, haven't you?" "Yes, that's true. Is there anything wrong?" "Oh, no. But you were warned. We just want you to be happy here. It's not a problem for us." Well, that was a relief. After that brief conversation, I wore my stacked heels to class on occasion, without any comment, except from my friends. They said I looked very cute. Jenna had given me a couple pairs of rather pretty earrings to wear. Dangles, I'm afraid. My hair had grown almost down to my shoulders by now. I was taking much better care of it and had switched to Jenna's brand of hair care products, which gave me more volume and shine. But I did need a proper cut. They were both dying to get me into the campus styling salon, and just before Christmas vacation, I finally succumbed. I came away with a soft body perm and a trim that made me look even more girlish. A wavy page boy with bangs, I would call it. And that wasn't all. My blouses now had noticeable bumps in them, just like Asher's. Perhaps even more so. I was also sleeping in soft, sensual nylon nightgowns now. One of 3 I simply couldn't resist on our last excursion to the lingerie store. I had fallen completely in love with sexy women's lingerie and wanted to wear it constantly. I couldn't keep my hands off the delicate fabrics. If Jenna didn't mind a bit of femininity in her men, I supposed she must be quite pleased with me by now. I was becoming so soft and rounded, though. It wasn't just that I had developed an affinity for nylon and lace. My bottom and chest were growing genuinely round and soft. I was becoming more and more like Asher with each passing day. Very girlish by my own admission, and I think it was becoming quite obvious to everyone around me. I'm afraid I was beginning to swish a bit, too. Not excessively. Not campy like some of the obviously gay boys. But noticeably. The faculty had nothing negative to say about any of it. Only compliments, in fact. I didn't understand when I overheard a snippet of conversation that I was certain was about me. "Well, she was warned," one voice said. "But doesn't she look sweet now? And look how she carries herself and uses her hands." She? Me. Were they referring to me with that feminine pronoun? They were certainly looking directly at me. Of course, I had been going home every weekend, and my parents witnessed these gradual shifts in clothing and disposition, in style and mannerisms, over just a few months. A little over 3, actually. Mom did the laundry. She saw everything. My elegant nails and styled hair and dangling earrings. my carefully arched eyebrows, and now darkened lashes. The subdued eyeliner I had learned to apply with increasing skill. She saw the shine on my lips and my softening, changing body. She knew exactly what hung in my wardrobe now. Nothing but girls' clothing and lingerie. I had lost weight in my shoulders and waist. My muscle mass had diminished noticeably, but I had gained in other places. My bottom and chest had filled out considerably. My complexion was flawless, but I couldn't help jiggling slightly when I walked. "Honey," she said one evening, "is there something you want to tell your mother? You've put on some weight, haven't you?" I hesitated. "Gee, Mom, I don't think so. Why do you ask?" "Oh, please, Evan. We're not blind. Or is it Evelyn now? That did it." Something inside me crumbled at her words. I just looked at her, and without much warning, the dam burst. She pulled me close, and I wept against her shoulder. We wept together. My mascara ran in dark streaks down my cheeks. "Oh, Mom, I think I'm turning into a girl. Whatever am I going to do? The worst of it is, I love what's happening to me." "Do you really, dear?" "Yes, with all my heart." She stroked my hair gently. "Well then, be whomever you must. But be happy. That's all we want for you in the end. To be happy. Your daddy is a bit taken aback by all this, but I'll make him understand. Is the job going all right?" "Just fine, Mom. They don't seem to even blink an eye at any of this." "Well then, just be happy." "And what happens, happens." She paused and looked me over with a mother's appraising eye. "I really do think you should get yourself a few nice bras, though. You are developing quite noticeably." Mom took me bra shopping that very afternoon. Now that was a revelation, I can assure you. I could see the imaginary headlines in the school newspaper. "Evan buys first bras." When I returned to Claymore Hall after the holiday vacation, a surprise was waiting for me. The school psychiatrist wanted to see me in his office. "So, Mr. Miller," he began pleasantly, "how are things going with you? And how do you like your job here by now?" I knew he was trying to put me at ease, but it wasn't working. "Things seem to be going wonderfully, doctor, unless you know something you want to tell me." I thought I would just toss that out and see what came back. He smiled slightly. "Well, Evan, may I call you Evan?" "Of course. We've noticed some changes since you arrived. You stopped wearing your protective earplugs some time ago, and you've been eating in the student cafeteria for 3 months now." I shifted in my chair. "Well, I am the same age as the students. It's a little more comfortable for me there." "I see. Well, as I said, there have been some changes. We like your work very much and want you to stay. So it's time we had a talk about your future here." I thought that sort of conversation would come from the personnel administrator. Not in a case like yours. You see, Claymore is a special school. We cater to a very special kind of student, usually young people who have been in a good deal of trouble elsewhere. I don't understand. They all seem quite well behaved to me. Yes. Well, that is because they are under a constant barrage of subliminal conditioning combined with various chemical reinforcements. The program is designed to alter them into acceptable members of society. My heart began to race. "You mean this isn't just an ordinary prep school?" "Far from it, I'm afraid, Evan. Although we don't advertise as such. And you have inadvertently fallen in with the student body's program. Perfectly natural in your quest for company your own age. We have no problem with it as long as you don't. In fact, we feel you may be ready to progress to the next level. You seem quite comfortable now as a feminine person." I looked down at my manicured hands folded in my lap. "I have become terribly effeminate, haven't I?" "Yes, dear. But it was to be expected after all. You have actually progressed beyond merely effeminate into truly feminine. You didn't follow the rules we suggested, and now you are happily paying the price." "I'm happy, doctor." Which I don't really understand. "But what do you mean by the price?" He leaned forward slightly. "You are becoming a girl, of course. Doesn't your own mind tell you that is what you want?" "Oh yes, doctor. But why? Why do I crave these pretty clothes? Why do I want to wear dresses and sexy high heels and makeup and look like Jenna? What has happened to me? And why am I growing breasts and this lovely rounded bottom that swivels when I walk? Why are my thighs filling in? Why am I talking like a girl and thinking about men? One thing at a time, Evelyn. We may as well start calling you that now. You, of your own choice, subjected yourself to our reprogramming. It comes through the speakers in your room 24 hours a day. That began to make you susceptible and accepting of femininity in boys. Then you started eating with the students and began receiving massive doses of female hormones along with other conditioning agents in your beverages at each meal, just like they do. And here we are. I sat in stunned silence as he continued. The chemicals are converting your body into that of a young woman, and your mind wants every bit of it due to the programming, enhanced by the hormones themselves. You can't help it. Even I cannot change your mind now. The programming is not reversible, and we know you don't care anymore anyway. You want to be Evelyn, don't you? Yes, doctor, I do. Oh, what have I done? At that moment, my perfectly manicured hands rushed up to my abundant head of shiny hair with its blonde highlights. My long, slender nails gleamed in the office light. Now don't worry, dear. What about your parents? How do they feel about all this? They've seen everything. They know. And they just want me to be happy. Wonderful. And happy you shall be as a beautiful young woman. You are here in the office today to begin your formal transition. You will be receiving a time-release injection every week through June, and I will counsel you as needed along the way. I think you will make a lovely addition to our staff, Evelyn, and if you decide to move on to college yourself someday, we may be able to help you financially if you sign a contract agreeing to return here and teach afterward. I nodded slowly, absorbing it all. You no longer lust after Jenna, do you? Heavens no. Good. Because she's a boy too. For now, at least. I stared at him. Really? A boy? Absolutely. Now, you will also need some electrolysis treatments, and we are fully equipped for that here on campus. I'll make your first appointment for you. He slid a form across the desk toward me. With your parents' permission, we can remove your useless hormone factories. Please take this form home and have it signed so that we can dispense with them. Most males in your situation would want them replaced with prostheses, but you will actually benefit from the empty space. It will give you a much smoother silhouette. He paused and smiled warmly. I would consider letting Jenna and Asher take you shopping for some skirts, dresses, proper bras, and pumps, young lady. You know you want to. Oh, doctor, do I ever want to? Thank you so much. I took the form and left his office feeling elated. Everything was finally clear to me now. I was truly going to become a woman, even if it had happened by accident or fate. He had said a beautiful young woman. The words echoed in my mind like music. And so the pretense of Evan was dropped entirely. Jenna owned up to who she really was at my gentle prodding. A juvenile delinquent with 3 strikes against him before arriving at Claymore. She seemed perfectly happy now to be a girl with a sweet disposition and a promising future. She showed me a photograph of herself before her transformation. They were 2 entirely different people. I could scarcely believe my eyes. As the doctor suggested, we went out and spent more of my money on girlish essentials. I now knew instinctively how to walk and talk and act like a proper young lady. No article of feminine clothing was a mystery to me anymore. It was all in the programming and the training that Jenna and Asher had provided over those transformative months. I swished beautifully in my new heels, and just like that, Evelyn became the new teacher's assistant. Heels and a dress and appropriate makeup completed the picture. When I showed up for class so attired, Mrs. Carter looked up from her desk and smiled broadly. Evelyn, you look simply lovely. Doesn't she, class? Yes, Mrs. Carter, came the chorus of feminine voices. It was hard to keep a secret when the entire school was geared toward making such changes. It still bothered me somewhat that they had never mentioned the true nature of the place. They had simply advised me to wear my earplugs and eat with the faculty. But then again, I was rather happy with the results. I could hardly complain. I continued to grow and shrink in all the right places and reveled in my blossoming femininity. My parents signed that permission form, my father somewhat reluctantly, of course, and I underwent a minor operation under local anesthetic. My panties fit much better afterward. The unsightly bulge was gone, along with my ability to produce offspring in the traditional male fashion. My hair now cascaded down to my shoulder blades in golden waves, and I was a 5'5.5" blonde working on a respectable B+ cup. I watched as the first-year boys changed into first-year girls with rarely a whimper over the following months into spring. A few fought the process, but they found themselves evolving regardless, becoming ever more feminine with each passing week. Asher and I became even closer as she began wearing skirts and a bra, and full makeup too. By June, there were no obvious boys remaining in any of my classes. To all intents and purposes, my parents now had a daughter. All of my unwanted body hair was gone through the electrolysis treatments, and I was looking forward to some quality bikini time at the county pool that summer. With the removal and rearrangement of certain things, to be completed in the fall, and with my new feminine urges awakening, I was ready to break a few hearts. Oh yes, I had become quite oriented toward handsome young men, and was terribly unashamed of it. As it turned out, Jenna, no longer the object of my romantic affections, lived in one of the nicer neighborhoods, just about 15 minutes from my family's home. I suppose money doesn't keep people from getting into trouble. She had graduated a little above the middle of her class, but had decided not to continue on to college after prep school. Instead, she planned to take her computer skills and find a job after enjoying a little vacation time. We exchanged addresses and phone numbers. After we finished up the final paperwork at school, I called her that very evening. I drove over to her house the following afternoon. I wanted to see where she lived and meet her parents and find out how they felt about having a daughter instead of a delinquent son. Mrs. Archer was very gracious and treated us both like refined young women, which I suppose we were by now, by hook or by crook. Jenna proved quite domestic at home, helping her mother in the kitchen without being asked. They had their own swimming pool out back, a rather impressive one, large and sparkling in the summer sun. My swimsuit was in the car. After Jenna finished with the lunch dishes, we changed and went outside to catch some rays. She had a striking figure, which made me wonder suddenly what had happened to certain parts of her anatomy. Oh, they didn't explain it to you? Explain what? Well, that was part of my sentence. While you were finishing up the term's paperwork at school, I was in the hospital. I really am a girl now, Evelyn, completely and forever. I stared at her in amazement. She continued, stretching out on her lounge chair. You see, my last crime. His last crime, I should say. It was rape. And that was the final straw for the judge. Being a minor, they couldn't give me the regular adult sentence, so they offered Claymore as an alternative. Of course, they didn't really explain the full arrangement to my parents, or to me. But I truly love being a girl, Evelyn. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun, too. You'll discover that for yourself soon enough. You don't have a choice either, you know. Yes, so I've been told. But who is going to pay for my operation? My folks certainly can't afford something like that. Didn't I hear them offering you a deal if you came back to teach? Yes, they did mention something along those lines. Well, there you have it. You teach, they pay. You get a good career and nobody loses. And you and I get to find ourselves a couple of wonderful men to take care of us for the rest of our lives. Doesn't that sound like fun? Jenna, you little devil. You have this whole thing figured out to the last detail. If I didn't know better, I would think that last thing he did was on purpose, knowing exactly what would happen to you. She laughed, a musical, feminine sound. Yeah, maybe I did plan it that way. But you'll never know for certain now, will you? And here you are, fallen into the same web, stuck in satin and lace, surrounded by femininity, oozing sex appeal from that bikini, advertising your charms with every tap of your heels on the pavement. I'll bet you can't wait to get back to school and see the new crop of soon-not-to-be boys, and finish up your year of living as a woman before your final surgery. She had me there. I couldn't argue with a single word. Even without the constant barrage of subliminal programming, which was no longer necessary since I was fully cooked after 2 semesters, I would continue taking my hormones willingly. My mind drifted further from manhood with each passing day. Any thoughts of ever going back had vanished entirely. I didn't want to go back. I wanted to move forward into this new life spreading out before me like a promise. Just then, a shadow fell across my face. I couldn't quite see who it was with the sun behind them, but I could tell immediately it was a man. A substantial one, about 6 feet tall and perhaps 185 pounds of solid muscle. "Oh, hi, Mark," Jenna said casually. "This is Evelyn. She's the new student assistant at Claymore. She doesn't live too far from here. Sit down so she can see you properly. Mark lives next door, Evelyn. We let him use the pool in exchange for taking care of it. He goes to Crestwood College, a sophomore." Mark moved around and took my hand in his. Lifting it gently, he pressed his lips to my knuckles in a gesture that sent electricity shooting up my arm. "Would you like to take a swim, Evelyn? You're absolutely lovely." My heart fluttered wildly in my chest. "Yes, Mark. I think I would like that very much." "Thank you." He held onto my hand and lifted my 120 pounds effortlessly as I rose from the lounge chair. I had been right about his dimensions. He stood a good 6 inches taller than me and was beautifully built with a rugged, handsome face and a warm, inviting smile. Oh my goodness! My hormones shifted into overdrive instantly. I had no idea I would react this way to a real man. Butterflies danced in my stomach, and my knees felt slightly weak. I needed to talk to Mom in a hurry when I got home. I hoped desperately that he liked what he saw, and I couldn't help wondering whether he had any idea I wasn't totally real yet. Certainly, he knew all about Jenna and her transformation. They were neighbors after all. He kept hold of my hand as we walked toward the water's edge together. We dove in side by side and swam to the far end of the pool, our bodies gliding through the cool, refreshing water. When we surfaced, he was smiling at me with those warm eyes, and I knew in that moment that my new life as Evelyn was only just beginning.